Hello, friends, and welcome back to another Mama's Partnering with God podcast. I am so excited that you decided to tune in with me today as we are going to be talking about leaning into God's strength and how important it is and whether or not we are actually leaning into His strength. And I know that can be a struggle to know whether or not we are doing things in God's strength or whether we are doing things in our own strength. And that is what I would like to try and clarify for you guys today in this episode so that the next time that you're wondering, is this me trying to do it myself or is this something that God is helping me with? You will be able to answer that question. So, with that being said, let's jump right into this episode so that you can know whether you are doing things in God's strength or your own strength. Welcome to the Mama's Partnering with God podcast. I am your host, Molly Bunnell, mom, wife, and Jesus lover. And this is where we tackle life struggles with the help and guidance from God. In this podcast, you will find God-led solutions through partnering with God in your life. My mission is to equip you with the tools that will bring you closer to God, allowing you to find faith, hope, and peace so that you can tackle marriage, motherhood, and finances with ease. It can be so easy to let the world run your life, but what do you get from that? Pain, heartache, struggle? But with God as your solution and creating a God-led lifestyle, hope, joy, and peace are just knocking at your door. So, if you're ready to finally team up with God, doing things in His strength instead of your own, you better turn that Mickey Mouse on for your kids and plug in those headphones, Mama, so we can go partner with God. Alrighty, so before I jump into this, I would like to say that I am recording with my little 3-month-old in my lap. I can't believe she's already 3 months old. So if you hear any coos or any talking or crying, you'll know why, because she's right here, right next to the microphone, just like I am. So maybe she'll decide to say hi a little later on, or maybe she won't. But I just thought I'd let you know that that's what that noise is if you hear something. Okay, so the reason that I wanted to talk about knowing whether or not you are doing things in God's strength or your own strength is because in this new direction that I'm going with mastering your time and your money so that you can grow in all areas of your life, you kind of got to be able to know if you're doing things in your own strength or God's strength, especially if you're trying to focus on partnering with God and rather trying to do it the way of the world, because that's not the way we want to do it, especially here in this podcast where we are trying to partner with God. So I know that I had always been a little confused on what it meant to doing things in God's strength instead of in my own strength. And I talk about it all the time in this podcast. And I wanted you to be able to know what it meant and what I was talking about so that the next time I go and reference doing something in God's strength, you're not questioning what that means. And it's in order to master your time and money, you're going to have to partner with God. You're going to have to allow Him to guide your steps, to be the one to do things for you when you don't have the strength to do it yourself, because time and money can be both idols and they can be hard to get through and a struggle, and doing it ourselves is not fun. And that's why you want to try to do it in God's strength. And I will tell you why in a little bit. So, what you should learn in this episode is how you know if you are in God's strength, because only through His strength can you move mountains. We can only go so far in our own strength. Our own strength fails us. It has limits. It can only take you to a certain level, and the levels that we want to reach, the goals that we have are so high that we can't do it in our own strength. We have to do it with God's strength. We have to allow Him to be the one to guide our steps, Him to be the one to guide our words and our actions, and to do things with Him so that we can get to where it is that we are called to be and actually achieve those amazing goals that He has destined for our lives, because He had books written about us before we were even thought of in the womb. So we should be excited that He wants to give us His strength. We should be over the moon that He is willing to just as easily give it to us without question, without having to work for it. All we have to do is ask for God to help us, and He will give us His strength. He loves to give us His strength and to be able to help us through these hard times, rather than trying to focus on ourselves and try to do it ourselves. And that's what the world says. The world tells us all the time that you can do it. You can do it by yourself. You don't need help. There's no point in trying to go out and do things with God, because you are amazing and can do it yourself. Which, I mean, some of those things are nice to hear, but it's not true. If you want to go to the places that God wants you to go, you've got to go in His strength and stop trying to do it in your own. Stop trying to be the leader. Stop trying to be the chief. Let God be the one to guide you and control you and shepherd you, and He loves you so much, so let Him do it. Okay, I could go on and on about that because I love talking about being in God's strength. So let's jump in to how you know if you're in God's strength or if you are doing something in your own strength. And the first thing that I want to mention about this is how easy the decision comes when you think about doing it. Like, whatever situation you're in, whatever you're trying to face or get through, whether it's something super, super difficult or something as simple as trying to figure out if you're gonna go camping or not. I know that with my first child as an infant, I was just like so stuck. I could not go camping with her because I could not see it happen, because I was trying to do it in my own strength instead of just letting God take control. And I know that's a small thing, but God wants to be in all areas of our lives, whether it's the big decisions or the small decisions. He wants to be there to help us through it, and He loves to be there. He loves to give us the strength to guide us. He loves to do that. It lights Him up. I mean, as a parent, isn't that something that lights you up when your child comes to you and actually wants your help and actually wants you to be there for you? Like, I know as my last child, my daughter, who's 2 years old now, went through the stages of needing me less and less and becoming more and more independent, it just hurt my heart every single level. I'm sure you know what I'm talking about, and I'm sure it'll happen again with this one. We're still in the needing mommy a lot stage, and I totally love it. And that's the same way God is. He loves to be there for us and to help us. So that's why when the decision comes easy, you're doing it in God's strength. So I know there's lots of times where I look at a situation and I like to map things out. I'm kind of a planner, and if you're listening to this, I'm sure you are too. So I like to plan things out, and I see things. And if I don't see something working out, I stress out about it, and it generally doesn't happen. Like the camping, I couldn't see it working out. I couldn't see it actually being able to happen, even though if I'd have just went with it and flew by the seat of my pants, then I probably would have figured it out, but it stresses me out to no ends doing stuff like that, even though I used to be the one that would do things by the seat of my pants all the time. So I don't know what's any different now, but it is different. But that's why when the decision comes easy, if you're looking at a decision, so I was struggling here with trying to come up with new content for my podcast after maternity leave, after being sick with COVID. I just could not come up with anything. I struggled and I struggled, and I realized I was doing it in my own strength after all of a sudden God's telling me the next episode. And I'm like, oh my gosh, that was so easy. I can write this down super quickly. I can talk to you about it nonstop, and God can just flow through me, when before it was so hard. I was working 10 times harder trying to get it to come together, and it just wasn't. It wasn't coming together, and that's because it was in my own strength rather than God's. When God helps, everything flows, everything comes out so easily, and you don't have to stress about it. It's just there. And that's because God is the one who can do impossible things, and He knows the right next step. So instead of trying to figure it out myself and be in a slump and overwhelmed and stressed and having a panic attack or anxiety attack, I don't know which one it was, then I can just lean on God and know that He is there and that He knows the next step, and He will be guiding my steps to take the next right step. Okay, so that's number one, is when the decision or the plans come together easily. Number two is that God will write it on your heart. So what I mean by that is there are times when you have something pop into your head and you're just like, no, that's not me. That's not something I want to do. I don't like doing that at all. And then all of a sudden, maybe it could be a day, it could be weeks, it could be a month. I mean, it could even be a year, depending on how quickly God writes it on your heart. But God will start easing your heart into actually taking on whatever it is that He is guiding you to, when before you were totally against it. Maybe it's moving. Maybe you're like looking at this house and you're like, oh yeah, that's nice. It's in a nice location. And then you're just like, yeah, I don't want to move though. I like the look of the house, but I don't want to move. I want to stay right here. And then a little bit later, you get a little bit more of a pull to maybe move, and then a little bit later, it's more and more, and then all of a sudden, when before you were against moving, you're all for it. You're ready to move. You have the direction in which you want to move, the type of house you want to go into, all that kind of stuff, and you don't know how that happened. It was just started with a little itty-bitty seed that God planted in your heart, and it grew, and it became His desire instead of your own desire. Something you didn't want became something you did want, because that's the direction God is leading you. And I love that. I have experienced that myself so many times, and it just warms my heart every single time I think of it. All right, so that's number two. Whether God writes it on your heart and plants that little seed, and it just grows into something that you desire instead of something you don't desire. All right, well, apparently she wanted to go back to sleep even though she had just woke up. Oh, you gotta love the infant stage where they have no set schedule, right? Anyways, as I was saying, the second step that we were talking about was God planting a seed in your heart and just writing it on your heart, and it becoming something that you desire instead of something that you have absolutely no desire to do. The third thing that I want to mention is you say or do something that you never would have yourself. And I know multiple times on this podcast I have said, well, that's from God. That is not something I would have said. And it's just something that God was speaking through me for you guys. And it's because I was doing things in God's strength. I was allowing Him to speak through me in the times and sessions that He knew were best, and that I couldn't say it the right way, and you guys needed to hear it in the way that He spoke it. And so that's why it sounds so much better coming from Him than it does ourselves. And when we try to speak something a certain way and He changes it, it means that we are not able to do things as good as He is. And that's okay. That's okay that I can't be as good as God, because then I lean on Him and I desire Him and I want His help. I don't want to try to do it myself, because I know all I'm going to do is fail rather than succeed with His help. And I don't know, I just absolutely love when God steps in and directs my steps down a path that I never would have thought, or speaks through me in a way that I never could have done that myself. And I just absolutely love it. Okay, so one more thing that I want to touch on before I hop off is that leaning into God's strength and doing things in His strength is a mindset and a heart set thing. So it's where your mind is and it's where your heart is. It's not something that other people can see. It's only something that you can see. So you can go up to someone and say, oh my gosh, am I doing this in God's strength? Well, we can't tell you that. That's something that you and God have to talk out yourselves, and you have to rely on Him to tell you whether you are or you aren't. And opening up your heart to hear God saying yes or no to whether you're doing things in God's strength is so amazing, rather than sitting there and not being able to come up with things. You can actually listen for God and prepare yourself to hear Him throughout the day, because I have heard God everywhere. I've heard Him in the shower, I've heard Him while I was working, I've heard Him while I was reading the Bible. But you have to prepare yourself for it and allow God to speak through you in order to hear what He is speaking to you. And that's why this is such a mindset and heart set thing. I know another way I like to explain it is that there are times when I'm parenting and I want to show myself as much as I can in Jesus's love and be as much of Jesus as I can and do things in love for my children, instead of doing it with like a mindset that I'm angry. And so I will say something or do something and I will be so sad because the action I took was done in hate. It was done in a revenge kind of mindset, rather than in a love mindset, rather than, oh, hey, I just scolded her because she did something wrong, but it wasn't out of love and it wasn't to change her into a better person. It was because I was mad and she wasn't listening and I just wanted to yell at her. Like, that's what I'm talking about, how this is a mindset and a heart set issue. You have to have your mind in the right place. You have to have your heart in the right place. And if you don't, then your own strength takes over, your own mind. You do things in your own way rather than listening for God and doing things in His way. Well, that was my eldest daughter. So now hopefully I have 2 happy kids. So like I was saying, doing things in God's strength is a mindset thing. It's not something that other people are going to see and be able to correct for you, which is why it kind of makes it difficult. And that's why I wanted to go over these points so that you could see for yourself and analyze the things that you're doing and the way that you're doing things, and see if you are doing things in God's strength or if you are doing things in your own strength, and if things are hard, if they're easy, if it's something you want or you don't want. it's definitely something that God will tell you what's going on, and you just have to be willing to open up your heart and your mind to be able to hear God's voice. And if you need help on whether or not you're hearing God's voice, I do have a past episode. It's episode 9, and it's listening for God's voice. It will help you in that department, but I wanted to make sure that you had a place to reference if you needed to know if you were doing things in God's strength, since, like I said, that is something that I talk about all the time. I feel like I'm a broken record about it, but it's because it's so important to me, and it's so important to everyone, just knowing whether or not you're legitly trying to do things in God's strength. And if you are trying to get to a point where you know you're doing things in God's strength, then you have to know what it looks like. You have to know what it feels like. And that is why I did this episode, and I hope that I painted a bright enough picture for you so that you understand. If you don't, definitely feel free to hop over to the Mamas Partnering with God my goodness, I can't talk, Facebook group and voice your concerns, voice your questions. Let me be able to help you further and deeper your relationship with God and partner with Him better than you maybe were before, or in a deeper way than you knew you could. So with that being said, I do want to touch again on the fact that I am working on creating a coaching program for you guys. I just haven't gotten it up and going quite yet because one thing after another, with COVID. So then last week I got some work done, and I'm getting a little bit more done this week, but I haven't quite gotten the program going 100%. But I still want to let you guys know that there are going to be coaching opportunities with me on mastering your time and your money, and I am super excited to be able to help you guys with that. So with that being said, I hope that you were able to glean as much information as you could from this. And if you have any questions, like I said, feel free to hop over into the free Facebook group and ask me any questions you want. Or if they're a little more personal, you can always message me. I will answer them as soon as I can and definitely help you through whatever situation you have going on in your life. Well, with that being said, I want to wish you guys a happy weekend and hope that you guys are having fun this weekend. Friday, Saturday, and Sunday is what we call Brady Days here in the small village that I live, and it is so much fun. It's like celebration of the town coming to be, and there's lots of stuff like mud volleyball. There's turtle races, which is for the little ones, and we're going to do that with our daughter. And there are other kid games and park rides and, so much that can go on in a small little town, and it's so much fun. I love going every single year. So again, another topic that I could rattle on about that is nothing that you guys probably really are concerned about, but I hope you guys have as much fun as I hope to have this weekend, and I will see you guys next week. Hey Mama, before you head out, if this episode has blessed you in any way, would you please go and leave a written review over on Apple Podcasts so that it can reach, bless, and impact many other mamas the way it has you. I also want to personally invite you to come and join me and many other like-minded mamas over in my free Facebook group. I would love to hear your thoughts, answer your questions, and keep this conversation going. Praying God continues to bless you. See you next time.